To everyone who watches my life and gossips about it, don't give up. Season 2 is about to come out.
Hey boos, in this video I give commentary based on my opinion. Nothing is to be taken as factual. We are just here to have conversation. We don't expose and we don't sip tea on this channel. I'm giving you real talk straight, no chaser. Let's see if you can handle it.
Cause I'm a boss. I haven't done anything for you to be proud of.
Of course you have. You are marrying a man who can support you.
Hi ladies, it's Yoni and I'm back to update you on this crazy story about a woman who is facing life in prison for a crime she did not commit. She was set up by her boyfriend in South Korea. This will be season 2, part 1. This story gets crazier. Can you believe it gets crazier? I had to edit over 300 hours of footage, so please, if you really love me the way I love you because I sat down and edited all of that, please give this video a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get into season 2 part 1 because I still have more to edit. If you would give this video a thumbs up, it would get me fired up to get the next part out to you. So let's go ahead and get into season 2 part 1.
So moving forward in the story, here's a few things to note about Korea, just so that you understand what I'm saying moving forward. One, I had a sponsor before coming into Korea. That sponsor was here to help me get into Korea, to help me get situated, to answer any questions that I may have. I wrote notes for y'all since y'all was talking about my storytelling. When luggage comes through the airport in Korea, if they find something that may be illegal, they put an alarm system on your bag. They watch the cameras and they wait for you to claim your luggage to then go through an extra security checkpoint in the airport. 3, I was briefed prior to coming into Korea. There was a lot of things that I needed to read. I remember one of the things in the brief was to bring 3 months supply of all of your medications. 4, court proceedings in Korea. Can't speak for everyone, but this is how mine went. When you are charged with something in Korea or something may be illegal, before going to trial, you have the opportunity to go to the prosecutors and you have the opportunity to talk to prosecutors. And then if the prosecutors deem that you need to go to trial, they will send you to trial. But you have time to plead your case and tell them what was going on before you even go to trial, and you have time to pretty much mitigate the situation prior to a trial or a hearing. So moving forward in the story, we will be talking about what happened in Korea from start to finish, the witchcraft, how I came to know that everything that the menace told me was false information, and I'm going to try to tell the story from start to finish. I'm going to try to keep it in chronological order. But y'all, if you've been through a traumatic situation, you know that you experience memory loss, and some things, when they're in your brain, they are jumbled up. I had to put the puzzle pieces together after all of this happened and had to figure out what was going on. I realized that the menace was mirroring me the whole time. So when I was dating the menace, at times I was dating parts of myself. So I was looking at parts of myself. If you know anything about a narcissistic relationship, then you know what I'm talking about with this. So yeah, let's move forward into what happened. So prior to boarding our flights in the United States, I checked all of my bags and the menace's bags in my name. It was free for me to check bags, and in order to save the menace money, I checked all of our bags in my name. Months prior to getting into Korea, I asked my first sponsor, because I ended up having 2 sponsors. One left Korea and then I was assigned another one. I asked my first sponsor, did I need a visa to get into Korea? And my sponsor said, no, U.S. citizens do not need visas to get into Korea. Once you get here, you will be able to get your SOFA visa. So don't worry about that. The menace did need a visa because he was not coming here on a job or on an assignment. So he needed a tourist visa to come into Korea. And he got that. He purchased that prior to getting here. When we got into the airport, the menace and I were in 2 separate lines to get our passports stamped. When I got up to the front to get my passport stamped, they were like, hey, you don't have a visa. I was like, yeah, I know. Here's my paperwork. I was told I didn't need one. So they pulled me to the back just to purchase a visa. Once I was done with that process, I went down into baggage claim and I noticed that the menace was nowhere in sight. I'm looking around for him and I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I'm now looking at the conveyor belts to see which, conveyor belt my bag is coming out on. While I'm looking around for the menace, I end up seeing all of our bags in the middle of the floor. And I'm like, okay, maybe the menace is taking our bags to a taxi or something, like took them all off the conveyor belt to make it easier to pick up. As I'm getting closer to his bag, to our bags, I noticed that there is an alarm system specifically on the menace's luggage. I'm looking around for him, still don't see him. So I start picking up my bags from around his bag. I now see the menace coming back into the airport and he's now with security. As the menace is getting closer to me, they're speaking. I don't know what they're talking about, but the security worker walks away from the menace. And the menace is now telling me that he has to take his bag through an extra security checkpoint. The security guard told him that he needed to take his bag through another checkpoint. And I'm like, okay, do that. Like, what's the problem? He's like kind of acting weird. And I'm just like, what's the problem? Like, I've been stopped by TSA so many times. It's probably nothing. Just take it through the extra security checkpoint. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do that. So during this time, I tell the menace I'm going to go grab us a taxi, thinking that this won't take long at all. I go outside, I leave the airport with all of my luggage, everything that I have, and I walk outside of the airport. I notice that there's a million taxis, so there's no reason for me to order or hail a taxi right now. I'll just go back into the waiting room area to wait for the menace. That's what I'm doing. So time's going by, and the menace still hasn't come out of the airport. He still hasn't come out of the security area of the airport. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So at this point, my intuition is screaming at me. My intuition is screaming at me to leave the airport, leave him in the airport. And again, my moral compass and me wanting to be a good person kicks in and is like, I can't do that. Let me at least try to check on him. So I go up to one of the security workers and he's probably been in there for over an hour at this point. I go to one of the security workers and I'm like, hey, I described the menace to them. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, is everything okay? I'm just checking on him and seeing if everything's okay. This worker at the airport is like, oh yeah, we need to check your bags. And I'm like, okay, kind of like, whatever. I'm like a little bit taken aback. And so she takes my passport and she's like, yeah, you need to bring your bags back into security. And I'm like, okay. So I take bags that have already been out of the airport back into security for them to check. They are checking my luggage 5 times over. This is taking a lot of time. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't have anything. Can I please go? At this point, they dump out my medications and they find I brought my Adderall prescription because I have ADD. I brought that into Korea, and then they find Percocets at this time. I look over at the menace and the menace will not look at me. He will not look me in my face at all. And so the airport workers are now asking, do you have prescriptions for these? I'm like, yes, I have prescriptions for that. That's my Adderall. That's my prescription medication. And I look over at the menace and I'm like, do you have your prescription for this? Menace goes, yes, I have my prescription. I have a prescription. And I'm like, okay, we have prescriptions for these. So the lady is now like, well, we need to test these. We need to make sure that they are not fent. We think that these are fent. My Adderall, including his Percocets. She's like, we need to test them. And I'm like, okay, nothing's fent. It's a prescription. Okay. whatever. So we're waiting to like for somebody to come in and test these medications. In the meantime, I'm like, hey, I'm here on orders. I work for the government, you know, what like I need to do at this point. And she's like, okay, well, we need to call one of the government representatives over here. So they call CID, which I believe that stands for Criminal Investigation Division. And they call CID. At the time, I didn't know that was CID, but that's who they called. CID is supposed to come and help translate everything because at the airport, there was a huge language barrier and we really couldn't talk much at all. So the people come back, they test the medications, and obviously the Percocets come out to be fentanyl. I look over at the menace, and the menace cannot look at me. His hands are just in his head like that, and I'm in shock. I'm completely in shock. And I'm looking at the menace, and the menace he can't look at me. He will not look at me. He can't look at me, and he's starting these fake tears, which obviously at the time I didn't know were fake tears. So I'm asking him, you know, like, how are things fent? How is this fent? Like, you know, like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know what they're talking about, blah, blah, blah. So the CID rep is now there and he's talking to me and they pull me into a back room, like a whole locked up to abroad situation. There's a bed in this room, there's a desk in this room and a couple of chairs, and that's pretty much it. They pull me into this back room and it was just me at first. The menace did not follow. He was not there. And I was like, no, go get the menace. And so they draft up this paperwork and it's in Korean. And I'm like, I can't sign this. I don't know what it says. I can't sign it. So they are trying to translate to me what the paperwork says. And so I just didn't believe what they were saying. And so I took out my phone and translated it myself. And the paperwork pretty much said illegally smuggled amphetamine, which is Adderall, and illegally smuggled fent into Korea. Long story short, that's what the paperwork said. And I was like, I can't sign this. I didn't illegally smuggle anything here. The amphetamine I told you is my prescription. I'm not illegally bringing that here. And like, I don't really know too much about the fent. So the CID agent pretty much translates to me that you will not be able to leave the airport. You will not be able to go into Korea if you don't sign this paperwork. So now I'm like, well, you need to change the wording on the paperwork because I didn't illegally do anything. I didn't intentionally illegally do anything. Like, I'm so sorry that this happened, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't do anything. I'm looking over at the menace, back and forth, and the menace is just not coming forth, not saying anything, truly just not doing anything. So I end up having to sign this paperwork to get out of the airport this day. And at this point, I'm like, okay, this is something that can be figured out later. Like, they're letting me go. So I call my sponsor and I let him know what happened at the airport. And my sponsor is instantly like, how did you get fent on you? And I'm like, I don't know. It couldn't be. Like, I just don't know. So my sponsor happened to be one of the Menace's frat brothers. And my sponsor was talking to the Menace, and the Menace is like, I'm going to figure this out. I think someone may have put something in there on accident. I'm going to figure this out. She had nothing to do with this. Like, I'm so sorry this happened. I'll talk to whoever I need to talk to. I'll talk to her boss, whoever I need to talk to get this figured out and to get this situated. I'm so sorry this happened. So we're on our way to the hotel. This is like my first step of, breath into Korea. And I'm looking at Korea, looking at all the buildings. And there's a glimpse of happiness and freedom that wants to come over me. And it's completely overshadowed by darkness, like instantly. And at that moment, I was not happy the rest of the time that I was in Korea. So we get to our hotel, get on base, and the Menace is just at this point, like, extremely apologetic, crying on and off. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to come forth. I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to tell them what happened, blah, 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 blah. In the same time, the Menace is telling me that he thinks that his father or one of his parents' medications may have gotten mixed up somehow, some way. And I'm like, what? So he's telling me that both of his parents were prescribed fent. He was like, don't worry. I'm going to call my sister and I'm going to get my father's medical documentation. He calls his sister. He asks for his father's medical documentation. And she's like, what? Like, no. Why would I have dad's medical documentation? Like, what? And so I'm just looking at him like, it was initially your medication. It was your prescription. And now it's your parents' prescriptions. Like, what is going on? The Menace is obviously gaslighting gaslighting, and I'm trying to make sense of what he's saying, and my brain is also in this time kind of conforming to what he's saying and starting to believe what he's saying. We'll get into that, why that happened later. So I now have to go brief my agency on what happened at the airport. And so, from the very beginning, I was like, hey, I brought my prescription medication here. I brought my Adderall, the Fit. I really don't know how that got there. I have no idea. The menace is saying it's his father's. I honestly don't know. And that was pretty much like my brief from the very beginning. I was like, I take full responsibility for bringing my medications over here. Maybe I should have looked into it more. I just really, truly didn't think that was an issue, considering the fact that I can get it prescribed here in Korea. I never would have thought that was an issue. And plus, we're told to bring 3 months supply of all of our medications. So I just really, truly didn't think that was an issue. So at this time, this is like within the first week of being in Korea, I had already contacted my realtor prior to coming into Korea. And so now we're getting scheduled to start looking for homes and things like that. Because when we first got here, we were living on base, and basically living in a hotel on base. So I'm starting to schedule things with my realtor, and we are, going around looking at apartments and stuff like that. So this is one of my favorite things to do. This is like a hobby of mine, to just go look at apartments, look at homes. Like, I just like doing that, and I like looking at things that are out of my price range. That's my pastime. That's my fun. I like doing that. So while we're with this realtor, Menace is sprawled out in the backseat. He is sweating. He's asking the lady to turn up and turn down her air condition. He's asking if he can roll down the window. He's just being extremely dramatic in the car with this lady. After a while, the Menace, he's like, I can't go in there. I can't look at another place. I just can't do this. I can't do this. So me and the realtor, we're going off and we're looking at other places. Every time we get back in the car to go to another place, the Menace is complaining the entire time. At some point, he ends up throwing up outside of the car. And so, the realtor at this point is like, well, do we need to stop for today? And the Menace is like, absolutely, we need to stop. I need to go back to the hotel. The entire time, the Menace is complaining about the hotel room, complaining about the bed, complaining about pretty much everything that's going on in Korea. And I'm just kind of like, no, we're not here for you. So one day I get back in from work. Mind you, this is like week 1, week 2. This is the first getting into Korea. I'm getting back in from work. I have to go and do my meet and greets and everything. And then I can come back to the hotel room. I come back into the hotel room one day, and the Menace is in the shower, and he's letting the shower just run on him. He's having diarrhea, he's throwing up, and is just sweating consistently. And I'm like, what is going on with you? He's like, I'm sorry, it's just the air. The air quality here is so bad. I have allergies. It's just my allergies. It's just my allergies. I'm just so sick right now. I feel like I'm about to die. So obviously I start looking up the symptoms. And what comes up, one of the things that comes up is withdrawal. And now I'm asking the Menace, I'm like, are you withdrawing? And he's like, no, I'm not withdrawing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, right here, you have all the symptoms of withdrawal. So what is it? Because you don't have symptoms of allergies. You have symptoms of withdrawal. So what is it? He's like, man, I didn't know that I was taking the Percocets that much. I had no idea. I had no idea that I was even taking the Percocets like that. And I was like, okay. So now I'm starting to ask, so the perks, they are Fent. You're withdrawing from Fent? No, I don't know how that got there. I really don't know. I think that's my dad's medication, blase, blah, blah, blah. So I'm also starting to ask questions. Did you give me Fent? You gave me Percocets in the past. Were they Fent? And he's like, no, I would have never done that to you. I've never given you Fent. I've never done any of that. I really, truly don't know how that got there. So one day my sponsor, he hits me up, and he's constantly in communication with me. And he's like, hey, let's go, tour the base. Let me go show you where everything is. We also need to get your keys to your office and blah, 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 blah. So that's pretty much what we were doing this day. And I get the keys to my office, and I'm finally getting situated and getting settled into my office. But once I got the keys to my office, the Menace never let me be alone. The Menace was constantly in and out of my office, constantly coming down from the hotel, well, constantly coming into my office. I'm trying to have meet and greets. I'm trying to meet with people. And the menace is just hanging around my office. He's not allowing me time to be alone again. So at this point, the menace is starting to switch up. He is now becoming very hostile, very violent, and is telling me that if he has to leave Korea, I'll be leaving too. These statements start off as a joke. Like, they start off like, you about to lose your job, like stuff like that. As a joke. And they progress into very violent situations. And the menace pretty much letting me know that if I don't do what he says, that he will ruin my entire life. He's not going back to America and he will be here the entire time. So I need to listen to everything that he says. So I get this email to my government email account, and it's addressed to my colonel. And it says, attached is a subpoena for Miss, my last name, Tiana M., assigned to your unit regarding incident of smuggling drug, amphetamine, fentanyl occurred at 1700 hours on 26 February 2023 at Incheon International Airport, Terminal 2, Incheon. She has to be present in the Office of Narcotics Investigation Division Number 3, Incheon Main Customs Office with the U.S. representative from the unit 1100 hours on 30 March 2023 for questioning. Please ensure she brings her ID and U.S. passport when attending. And then there are some USFK regulations. So at this time, I have been assigned a lawyer. I have briefly spoken to my lawyer, and the menace is now concocting this story about the fent, about how it's his father's. He is now telling me that I absolutely have to send over this stuff. And he's like, this will work. This will work. Like, you need to send over this medical documentation. You need to send over my father's death certificate and pretty much all the stuff surrounding his father's passing. And honestly, at this point, I truly did not know what to do. I think a part of me was trying to protect the menace, and a part of me was extremely terrified of what the menace was actually going to do. During this time as well, the menace is making phone calls to his sister, pretty much telling his sister how he wants to invite his uncle that he does not like. This is a blood relative that I have never met. How he wants to invite his uncle overseas to off him. I know that my life is completely in danger right now, and I have completely messed up. So all this information is submitted on the menace's behalf. Medical documentation for his father that was false. His father's death certificate, I don't know if that was fake or not. I have no idea. And it was just some other things. He also, because I wasn't willing to lie, he drafted up a whole thing. My lawyer asked for me to draft up like everything that happened, write it down and send it to him. So the menace also drafted up everything that happened and how the fent got into this country. He sent that to me via email, and it was forwarded to my lawyer. So around the 3-week mark of being in Korea, the menace gets a teaching job online. He's telling me how this teaching job, yeah, he makes so much money for this teaching job. People usually start off at $20,000, but they loved my interview so much that they ended up putting me at the highest pay. That's what he's saying. So for this online teaching job, he obviously needs internet. So my realtor's in and out. She's fixing things. And she's like hooking up the internet. Well, the menace is complaining about the internet. He's consistently complaining about the internet, how it doesn't work, how he's trying to get on his work calls and they keep going out. The internet just sucks. It doesn't work. So she comes over multiple times for this internet, sends other people over, blah, blah, blah. And she ends up pulling me to the side and she's like, hey, I don't know what he's talking about, but the internet is working. We've done everything that we can. Like, if it's not working anymore, then you all are pretty much going to have to pay for like a higher internet service. So the menace now is like asking if he can use my computer to work because his computer is just not working and nothing's working on his computer. At this time, I had set up my office space. My apartment is 4 bedrooms. My condo is 4 bedrooms. I have set up my office space. I bought a desktop. I bought a desk and pretty much just set up my office space for me. I told the menace he has, an extra room. He can use that extra room for anything that he wants. Set his office up, be able to like work in that room, buy yourself a desk, blah, blah, blah. Like, set your space up. While I was furniture shopping for a desk, the menace did not buy a desk. He just didn't. So he's now asking if he can use my office space, if he can use my computer, blah, blah, blah. So I'm at first like, no, you can't use my computer. Figure it out. Like, it's your job. Figure it out. Like, figure it out. Use your own stuff. Why are you consistently having to use my stuff? And the menace at this point is like, oh, like you don't want me to have anything. You're trying to control me. You're trying to control my money. You're trying to control my finances. And you know that I need this job, and you're hindering me from being able to do my job. It's your job, bro. Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So pretty much this gaslight fest. So one particular day I give in to allow him to use my computer while I'm at work. Well, while I'm at work, I'm consistently getting these emails, and they're Google codes to my phone, as if like someone's trying to log into my Google account. And I'm like, so I get home that day and I'm like, were you trying to log into my Google account today? And he's like, no, what are you talking about? So obviously I change the password to my computer and I move on. So days following this, I'm consistently getting these Google codes. After changing my password a couple of times, I'm like, okay, maybe it's nothing. Maybe somebody else had my phone prior and they're trying to get their Google code. Don't know. So we are gearing up to the prosecutor meeting March 30th at the airport. We go to the prosecutor meeting. I talk to my lawyer outside. You know, my lawyer's talking to the both of us and he's like, what happened? I'm like, I brought my Adderall over here. I'm so sorry that this happened. Like, I just was not aware that this was illegal in your country, but also I'm here on SOFA and I can get Adderall here. I know so many people with Adderall here. Like, I don't understand why this is an issue at this point. The minute starts telling the story about the fent. So we go into the room with the prosecutors. So we're in the meeting with the prosecutor. It's myself, it's the menace, it's my lawyer, a translator, a representative, a SOFA representative, and 2 CID agents. When the meeting starts, they kick the menace out of the meeting, which I found to be weird. So they're starting questioning and they're going over, you know, the Adderall, how that got here, my prescriptions. I had previously provided all of my prescriptions and everything. And I had just, because they were asking me so many questions before this meeting, I had just provided my whole like doctor's case file. I asked my doctor to send me my entire case file, everything I've been prescribed, and I gave them all of that. So it included like everything with my migraines, everything that was going on with me over the years since I've had that doctor, which I think was probably since like 2016 or something. They are asking me all these questions about the medical documentation, about my Adderall, and this questioning goes on for hours. Like, when did you have ADD? When were you first prescribed this medication? When blah, blah, blah. And this question goes on for hours. So we finally get to the questioning about the fent. I started answering the questions the way the menace wanted me to answer them in the beginning. And then I was like, internally, I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to sit here and lie. So I said, you have to ask the menace about it. I really, truly don't know. I don't have this information. You have to ask him. He said it's his father's. You have to ask him. So they bring the menace into the room and they start questioning him about the fent. And he answers the questions the same way he wanted me to answer the questions. And that pretty much consisted of the medication accidentally got there. It was his father's. We took care of his father, which I never did. And the medication was pretty much on accident. So they asked both of us, had we ever taken fent? And I said no. The menace said no. The menace texted me during this meeting and said, you need to change your answer to not to my knowledge. Throughout this meeting with the prosecutor, the menace is consistently texting me. He's listening in on the meeting, even when he was outside of the room, when he was inside of the room, and he's consistently trying to text me and texting me what to say during this meeting about the fent. And when they ask me about the fent, at a certain point, I'm consistently redirecting the questions back to the menace. You have to ask him. He knows about it. You have to ask him. Don't ask me about it. I don't know. You have to ask him. At the end of this meeting, which probably went on for like 8 hours, probably more, this questioning, they asked if I could drug test. And I was like, okay, sure. I was a little bit skeptical about this, obviously, because now I really am not sure if the menace gave me fent. I'm still a little delulu. I'm going to be honest. I'm very delulu at this point. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So they do a urine sample and they do a hair test. Obviously, the urine sample comes back negative and the hair sample had to get sent off to a lab. I asked my lawyer, I'm like, why aren't you all testing the menace? Like, the menace needs to be tested as well. Why isn't he being tested? And my lawyer tells me that's not how this works. The stuff was found in your bags. So you're the only person that's being tested. You're the only person that's being questioned and tried for this. So after questioning, I'm looking over the paperwork for questioning. I look over it, my lawyer looks over it, and my SOFA representative looks over it. And the main reason why I was looking over it was to be sure that they notated that the menace made statements. My intuition told me to look for that. I looked for it, I checked for it, and they did notate that he made statements. Mind you, the first half of this paperwork is written in Korean, and then the second half they translated into English. So obviously the only one I could read was in English. I had to go through and I had to sign all this paperwork. How you sign paperwork in Korea is you fingerprint every single last page and sign it. We're leaving the prosecutor meeting, and obviously at this point I realized that I've completely taken a bid for the menace. I'm the only one on the hook for this fence situation when I should only be being tried for Adderall. The menace is now getting comfortable because he knows that he is now completely off the hook for the fence situation. So the menace is getting comfortable now, and he's starting to tell me what actually happened at the airport. So what happened at the airport was that the menace came into baggage claim. Our bags were already in the middle of the floor when he went down into baggage claim without me. He is telling me that he tried to take his bag and run out of the airport with it, and he was this close to being in a taxi, and security came and ran him down and made him come back into the airport. He is telling me that he somehow managed to get the drugs out of his luggage that he had, which what they picked up from the scanners was a weed pen, but he also had other things. So now I'm looking at him and I'm like, your luggage with the security system, with the alarm system, was still in the airport when I came down to baggage claim and you were not there. So what you're telling me truly is that you tried to run out of the airport and leave me in the airport with your luggage because you know that you got caught, and you tried to leave me there with your luggage checked in my name. That's what you're telling me. And he's like, no, that didn't happen. I had my luggage with me. You were like, I don't know what you saw, but you didn't see that. I had my luggage with me and I took my luggage out of the airport. And he was like, I wasn't about to get caught up with that. I wasn't about to get caught up with that. Are you crazy? Da, da, da. So I'm like, Menace, I know what I saw. I saw the luggage in the airport. And he's like, nah, that's not what you saw. Y'all, in this moment, I can literally feel like this is the first time that I'm actually like really feeling this. I can feel my brain starting to change and switch into like believing what he says and picturing him coming back into the airport with the luggage. I can literally feel my brain switching into that. We'll get into the witchcraft later. So now at this point, I'm realizing that there is nothing that I could have done. I was going back and forth with myself in the beginning, like I should have just told the truth at the airport. But I'm now realizing that this was always his plan. He always intended to frame me for something and to ruin my life in Korea. He always intended to get me into isolation and completely dismantled everything that I built. That was always the intent. If I just said in the airport that it was his, he would have completely switched the narcissistic switch and had me go to jail right then and there. It didn't matter what I did in the prosecutor's office. It didn't matter if I was just like, all this was a lie. He did all this. He was going to completely flip it on me in those moments. I realized when he starts getting comfortable and he starts telling me these things that this was always in the plans. So now I'm overseas. I'm by myself. I'm with this person who I truly believe will off me if I make the wrong move. And I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. I know now that I have to right my wrong, that I have to come forth. I have to tell the truth, and I have to tell them that all of this information was a lie. And I'm really trying to strategically figure out how I can do this and how I can say like everything that he said in this meeting is not true. I truly believe that he brought it over here and it was intentional. He also brought other things over here. All of this was intentional. He always had plans to bring drugs into Korea and nothing was an accident, as he is saying. I'm getting extremely upset because I'm really coming to the terms and coming to the realization that everything that this man said surrounding this is a lie. That this was always the intent. He was always going to try to smuggle something into a foreign country. He didn't learn his lessons from Brittany Griner. I'm trying to figure something out. I'm also upset because the menace has been around friends and people that I knew in Korea. So not only are you putting my life in danger, you're putting other people's lives and other people's security clearances in danger just by being around, and you just truly don't care about anyone's life around you. I'm internally trying to figure out how to get out of this relationship. I know that I can't tell the menace that I want to be out of this relationship. I know that I can't tell the menace that he needs to go back to the United States. I know this. I know that my life's in danger and everything I do from here has to be extremely strategic, and I have to protect my life at all costs. Mind you, my family, my friends, besides my best friend, didn't know anything of what was going on. My best friend knew at the time, that the fent issue was an accident. This is what I'm thinking at the time. My brain was literally forced into believing what the menace was saying. I'm going on business as usual. My plans to come over into Korea was to travel Asia, and was to make content about living overseas and travel. So I'm still making content. The menace is still making sure that he's in specific content. And I'm trying to just act like everything is okay. Nothing's okay at this point. I'm literally crying and having panic attacks every single day because I genuinely don't know what to do. I've never been in a situation like this before. I've never been up on felony charges. I've never had anything in my background. So I truly don't know what to do at this point. I'm slightly hoping that, whatever the menace said works. My lawyer is telling me, don't worry about it. You're fine. They're going to dismiss this the next meeting with the prosecutor. You're not going to go to trial. You have medical documentation. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Don't worry about the fact that he is not, being brought up on charges. It's nothing to worry about. So in the back of my mind, I am plotting and planning. The menace is obviously making sure that I don't have any time to myself. He is smothering me. When I'm leaving out to work, he's rushing down to my car to come to work with me. He doesn't work there. Why he's doing that, I don't know. The thing that pretty much stopped him from coming to work with me was that he started that teaching position. So this leads me to getting a text message from one of his sorority sisters who work on my base. She texted me and she was like, hey, I have a job for the menace. Can he come in this week for an interview? Blah, blah, blah. I initially did not respond to her, and just out of kindness, I was like, hey, yeah, sure, I'll let him know. I had no intentions on letting him know a thing. So after taking a while, because I think I probably took a few hours to text her back, one of the menace's frat brothers, not my sponsor, another frat brother who worked on base, calls the menace and is like, hey, we have a job for you. Can you come down and interview for this position? The menace comes to me and the menace is like, you weren't going to tell me about this job. Somebody told you about this job. I need a job. I need a job on base, and you weren't going to tell me anything. You just want to ruin my life, and you just want to do X, Y, and Z, and you want to control everything, and you want to make sure that I'm not making any money. No, I want to make sure that you get the hell out of Korea. That's what I want to make sure. But I'm like, I was just doing stuff. I was moving around. I just didn't have time to tell you because I'm really just trying to hold it together and fake the funk like everything's okay, because I know that I can't let this man know that I'm plotting for him to get out of Korea. So he's getting prepared one day to go to this job interview, literally puts on a wrinkled shirt, puts on some jeans. And I'm like, you're going to a job interview looking like that. He's like, oh, the wrinkles will fall out. I'm like, are you a child? That's how you're going to present yourself at a job interview. I shouldn't have said anything, but I was just really irritated. At this time, also, his other job at the teaching position was pretty much getting on him about how he showed up on camera for teaching and saying that this is his word, saying that he looks extremely intimidating and that he needs to have a button up. He was showing up to this job with a t-shirt on, hair not done, all this stuff. And the menace is now like, you need to do my hair. You need to do my hair for my job. They're getting on me because my hair's not done. You need to do my hair. I'm like, no, figure it out. Like, figure it out. Put it in a ponytail. I don't know what you want to do, but figure it out. I'm like, I'm done at this point. So I'm like, I don't have time for that. I have other things in my brain. I truly don't have time for that. So he is taking forever to get dressed. I have to go to work. So I'm starting to leave out. I'm like, I don't care. I'm leaving out, to go to my job, my federal government job. And, I'm leaving him at the apartment, and he runs out the side of the apartment. Like I have to come up through the garage, and he runs out and pretty much like stops my car so he can get in the car. He's like, you really don't want me to get this job? Da, 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 da. I gave you time. I'm not doing this. He goes to the interview. He comes back and he's like, yeah, I'm about to be making a lot of money. I'm getting all these benefits. I get housing. I get this. I get that. And like, do you want me to move out? Do you want me to move out? Do you want me to just go get an apartment in Seoul? Do you want me to move out and blah, blah, blah? And I'm just like, do what you want. Do what you want. At some point, I look through the menace's phone. I'm trying to see if he has access to my email account, because obviously I've been getting these codes for someone to get into a Gmail account. So I looked through the menace's phone, and what I saw in his phone was text messages of him arguing with his friends, pretty much severing relationships and telling his friends that he's better than them, that they can't do what he does. He has a federal government position out in Korea and he'll be leaving the US and he's not coming back. I see a text message between he and his ex-girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend helped him get the job at the mayor's office. There's a text message between them, and he's telling her when he got fired and that he didn't embarrass her in any way, and that because of her, he got a federal government position in Korea. I see text messages between he and his sister, and there's a lot there, but in long story short, his sister is pretty much arguing with him to get his ish together. There are messages between he and P-Toots where he's trying to get P-Toots to come to a hotel, and they're very bottom barrel P-Toots. There are messages between he and other people, and people are calling him a snitch and pretty much saying he's a bitch, and the only reason he has anything is because of his parents. He just has mommy's money, and all he ever is and all he ever will be is a junkie. So now at this point, I realize that the menace has taken my life and told pretty much most of the people that he knew that did not know me, that he pretty much told everyone that my life was his. And I see that clear as day in these text messages. At this point, my vision is starting to become very clear. Stopped intercourse. I've stopped eating. I've stopped doing things for the menace. Outside of that, I'm still kind of acting like, oh, I love you so much. Like really faking the funk, just playing the game, but I'm plotting. So I wrote notes. He's on the phone with his friends. I'm acting like everything's great. Korea's great. We're having so much fun. Everything's great. So this is now kind of reaching the 2-month mark of being in Korea. And I now have a travel restriction on my passport. Oh, I forgot to add this. I started kind of picking people's brains about them like coming into Korea, how their medications work, X, Y, and Z. And pretty much the people that I knew who had ADD, ADHD said that they've never had any issues with bringing their Adderall into Korea. They, get all of their prescriptions from base. They've never had any issues. And I'm asking about whether or not they've declared their medications when they come into Korea. And pretty much everyone I know is saying no. Rarely ever declare my medications. Like I just come in, they look at them. There's like never any issue. So also now I'm realizing that they were just kind of tacking things on to make the charges larger. The issue was never my medication. It was always the fent. So that was one of the things that I did miss in the previous parts of me just picking people's brains. So we're now reaching the kind of like coming up on the 2-month mark of being in Korea. And the menace has to travel every 3 months in order to stay in in Korea. Obviously, I said before, in order for him to stay here the whole time that I was here, we would have to get married. I'm at this point now starting to ask for the marriage license. Where's the marriage license? You had it. I saw it in his book bag when we first got here. I don't know why I didn't take it out. Moving forward, I was asking for the marriage license that neither of us signed. He is gaslighting once again, and it's pretty much saying like, you had it, you lost it, you're always losing things, like you had the marriage license, you need to look for it, you need to find it. Once again, I can feel my brain starting to believe what he says and shifting into his reality. And I'm now fighting back the shift into his reality. I'm fighting back. I'm fighting that back. And I'm like, no, I saw it in your book bag. I know you had it. Where is it? He doesn't give it to me. He says it's lost at this point. That comes up later, which is why I said it. He is now making plans to travel out of the country. At this point, I have an eye hold. I have a travel restriction. I cannot travel out of the country. I'm kind of like, okay, this may be a good time for me to successfully leave the menace and be safe. Also, I'm pissed because I'm like, you really just took everything that I wanted to do. You stopped me from doing everything that I wanted to do in Korea. And now you're going off and doing all of these things that you never even had any plans or intentions on doing prior to meeting me. And I'm having this conversation with him and I'm like, you really just like took my entire life and you're living it as if it's your own. He has nothing to say. Nothing to say. So he's planning this trip out of the country and he leaves. I take him to the airport happily, come back home, and I'm now pacing the floors. Like I'm going back and forth and I'm going back and forth with myself and I'm literally fighting myself. Like, do I want to do this? Is this safe? Do I want to leave him in these moments? I'm like, God, give me a sign. Like, give me a sign. So I go over to my neighbor's house. As we met neighbors at some point, my neighbors had agreed to pick the menace up from the airport. And I go over there, I'm hanging out with them, and I tell my neighbors in those moments that I am leaving the menace. I'm packing up his things. One of my neighbors came over. She helped a little bit. She went home. And, that was that. I called all of my family and, my close family members and my friends back home. And I let them know that I'm leaving the menace. Still, I'm fighting my brain. I'm going back and forth. And I'm really trying to figure out if this is really, truly what I want to do. So my intuition tells me to call the menace. Give him a call. I barely talked to him the whole time he was in this other country. I give the menace a call and he's on the phone, and it is very evident that he is on the phone with me having intercourse with someone else in this other country. And I was kind of pissed. I'm not gonna lie. In those moments, I don't know why. Like, I was pissed, but it was kind of like, you really got me effed up. Like, you really got me effed up. So the menace pretty much made it very evident that he was cheating. And that's also a manipulation tactic that narcissists use. They do things right in front of you to pretty much break you down and break down your self-esteem. So in these moments, I spoke too soon and I was like, yeah, you can go ahead and leave. Like, you can just get on a flight straight back to the United States. There's no reason for you to come back to Korea. Your stuff is already packed. Don't come back. I will happily ship your stuff to the house that you have because you own a house, right? We're done.
So after I told him I was going to ship his stuff back to his home that he apparently owns and is getting rented out, he asked me not to do that because there's no one there to take care of it.
His sister ends up texting me and she's like, I just don't see the menace doing this. What you're saying he's doing, it just doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. Like, I really hope you guys work it out, blah, 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 blah. And I'm being nice in these moments because I'm just like, I really don't care. Honestly, I ask for her address so I can ship his stuff to his address. She respectfully says she doesn't want it there. So I move on with, just getting stuff prepared. I could have said everything to his sister in these moments, but I didn't know what the menace was going to do. I didn't know what he had planned. He obviously already told me that he was going to completely ruin my life if I broke up with him, and pretty much already said that I could never break up with him because of this situation. So my neighbors texted me and they told me that the menace changed his flight and that he's coming back into Korea early and that they're still going to pick him up from the airport. My neighbor was supposed to text me and let me know when they were heading to the airport and when they were coming back so that I could be out of the house. She did not text me this. When I got to the point of leaving the house, the menace had already come back.
So the menace changed his flight to an earlier day. Mind you, the neighbors are the only people who have this information, so I am relying on them to tell me when the menace is coming back. They told me that the menace was coming back late in the afternoon. Well, the menace ended up getting back early morning. They were supposed to text me and tell me when they were leaving for the airport and when they were coming back. They did not tell me, so now I'm realizing that these neighbors are probably ops.
And he is like ringing my doorbell, like just doing all this stuff. Oh, I had my realtor come over and change the lock and the lock codes and everything on my door. So the menace is back and he's pretty much hanging outside of my door. There was a point in time where I was checking the cameras and I checked them for a while and I did not see the menace outside of my door. So after I didn't see him outside of my door for a while, I tried to leave my condo, and the menace was hiding under my camera so that I couldn't see him. So he pushes me back into the house, and I kind of like hurry up and run around him and get out of the house. I get outside, run to my car, get in my car, and I call my realtor. And I tell my realtor to please call the police. The menace is in the house. She's like, how did he get in? We changed the lock. He, pushed me into the house. He's in the house. Like, he cannot be there. So the police come to the house and they are pretty much believing everything the menace says. The menace says that the house is his. The menace is saying that I can't put him out. He is pretty much screaming that we're married. We're married. I can't put him out. We're married. Well, in Korea, they have a law that if you're married to someone, you cannot put them out of the house. I didn't know this. The menace did, though. So he's screaming that we're married. He's screaming that everything in the house is his. He owns everything. He is a teacher. He teaches Koreans. He works for the government. The house is his. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, it's not. This is all mine. The lease is only in my name. This is not his house. The police officers are not believing me. I get them on the phone with my realtor, who tells them the same thing. He's not on the lease. The house is not his. It's hers. My realtor is a woman as well. So the police are asking me for my lease agreement. I give them my lease agreement and they tell me that's not enough to prove that this is not his home. My lease agreement only has my name on it. So I'm like, you need to get him out. This is not his home. I'm just going on and on. They're asking for my passport. The menace is now like, you even have your passport? Do you even have your passport? She smuggled drugs here. So are you going to believe her over me? She's on trial for smuggling drugs. He then tells them that I'm extremely violent and shows them pictures from when I bit him on his neck when he was graping me, and tells them that I'm extremely violent and don't trust anything that I say. So as I'm talking, the police officers are now telling me to shut the F up. Shut the F up. Like, we pretty much don't want to hear you. And I'm like, okay. I said, since you're not getting the menace out of here, I'll take my stuff and I'll leave until I can figure this out. Mind you, this week I had a conference to go to, so I had to be somewhere within the next couple of days. So I start packing my suitcase. The menace is flipping over my suitcase, telling the officers that everything that I'm packing in my suitcase is his. He bought all of the stuff in the house and everything is his. He throws my stuff out of the suitcase, takes my suitcase, and is telling the officer that the suitcase is also his. Y'all, this is my suitcase. It literally says Juicy Couture on it. What man have a Juicy Couture suitcase? I don't know. I'm showing the officers that and I'm like, this is a woman's suitcase. This is a woman's clothing brand. It's my suitcase. They don't believe me. And they pretty much let the menace do whatever he wants to do. He's taking everything out of my suitcase and lying about everything in my house that I pretty much had all this stuff before I even met the menace. So I'm going into my shoe closet and I'm now trying to pack shoes, just get stuff to have clothes to go to work this week. The menace comes into the shoe closet and spits on me. And now I'm screaming and I'm like, he just spit on me. You all aren't doing anything. That is assault. Y'all aren't doing anything. And the cops are telling me to shut the F up. At this point, I have called the cops to my home multiple times to try to get him out, hoping that I would get a new cop and they would understand or, they would do something else. So the menace is consistently lying to all of the cops and he's now telling them that everything is his. My car is his. Everything is his. So they're now checking all of my stuff and trying to make sure that it's the menace's. The menace is now saying that I stole things from him. I stole his Rolex. I stole his watch. wallet. I stole all this stuff. And I'm like, he just came back in from out of town. How could I have stolen his wallet? Also, his Rolex, his fake Rolex. What do I need with that? They're searching my car, trying to find this Rolex, all this stuff. Meanwhile, the menace is in my home with all of my stuff. Nothing in this house is his except some clothes.
So just a quick note for clarity, I never went back in the house by myself with the menace. Every time I went back into the home this day, I was with the police. But it obviously became completely evident that I was not protected even with the police there.
So I'm back in the house with the police, and I noticed that all the stuff that I packed up for the menace is now back in the house because I put it all outside. And he has like folded his clothes back up, put them up, put all his stuff up, put his shoes back in my shoe closet. Like, he's staying. He's staying.
So also something to note that I missed earlier on is that at the prosecutor's meeting, the menace befriended a CID agent. So ever since he befriended that CID agent, the menace would pretty much use that as leverage over my head. Like if I make the wrong move, he already has CID on his side and he'll use CID against me. So during this time with me trying to get him out of the house, the menace is now screaming at me, telling me that he will get CID involved right now. He's going to text CID right now. He's also telling me that he's going to contact the military police and tell them what I'm doing, tell them that I'm trying to put him out of the home. So this is kind of where I really realized that this man truly believes that this shit is his. Like that my life is actually his, because you are now threatening me, a government worker, to contact the military police to tell them that I am putting you out of my house that you have no ties to.
So this process goes on for hours. I finally go to the base and I get the military police involved. I didn't want to get them involved at first because obviously, like, I already had so much going on. I didn't want my job involved. I was hoping that I could handle this with he and the Korean police, and that would be that. That's not how that worked. So I went to the military base to get the military police involved. They ended up calling over to the Korean police and telling them that they need to get him out of the house. The home is property of the U.S. government. He does not work for the U.S. government, and they need to get him out of the house. I go back. They're still asking me for a lease agreement. I go to my office, get the whole big paperwork of the lease agreement, get everything that I've ever signed for the house that only has my signature on it, and I take it back to them and they look over it. They tell me that I cannot come into the house with the menace there, that they will get the menace out themselves. When the menace leaves and I finally go back into my home, my entire home was ransacked and half of my things were stolen. The menace stole bags, he stole jewelry, he stole clothes, he stole my pink Philips toothbrush, he stole my skincare, he stole whatever he could grab, he stole from my house. And the police just watched him do that, steal a whole bunch of women's items.